Scarlett Blade. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Silent Night, Memoirs of a Royal Guard, Chapter 42. The Exemplar's warning, in addition to being cryptic, initially seemed to be without merit. Iridescence and I patrolled the halls, checked on door locks, and shifted our guards around to break up patterns. It led to another long night and further interrupted my sleep cycle. At the same time, it also seemed to confuse the Griffins to no end. I got the impression that some of them were watching us. It could have been curiosity. It could have been because we were doing all sorts of things in the middle of the night. It could have been sinister. I'm not sure I'll ever know for certain. Perhaps by taking action, we'd stopped whatever I needed to be in the way of. In neither event, I was even more wary than wary by the time we were done. Iridescence stretched and asked, "Are you going to relieve me, or do you want me to go get the lieutenant?" "I'll take over for now." Her head tilted. "Are you sure? You look like you need some sleep." "I'll sleep during the day. There's less chance of anything happening than since Princess Luna will be with the king." Unicorn shrugged. "Yes, Sergeant. They're all yours." As she headed off down the hall, Iridescence paused and looked over her shoulder. "Maybe you really did just see things." "Yeah, it was probably just the seasickness and the lack of sleep. I'll be fine soon. Good night." "Good night," she repeated before disappearing. It probably was exactly what I told Iridescence, but deep down I did believe it, not for a minute. I don't like griffins in general, but King Renaud was no average griffin. He was a no-nonsense, everything-above-the-table sort of monarch. When he spoke, it was from his heart, and his words glimmered with honesty and integrity. Princess Luna seemed to like him, and it was tough not to feel the same. Many of the discussions on the first day were very informal. The pair just walked through the castle gardens and chatted while Thunder Tumble and I stayed 2 paces back and 1 pace to either side. King Renaud had only 1 guard close to him, but there were numerous ones on the balcony above the garden and at the doorways. That made me nervous, but it was customary that the hosting monarch provides most of the security for visiting dignitaries. To push for more than 2 personal guards would be an insult, and Princess Luna had made it clear we would not be insulting our host. Besides that, Alton, the king's personal guard, was a trustworthy sort. I got the impression that he was heavily vested in everything going smoothly. He'd have protected both leaders if something had gone awry. At least I believed he would. The conversations between our respectives charges was light and less formal, but it was clear that they were using it as time to get some of the less important agreements out of the way. That way, when the time came at the table, there would be already on common ground. "Equestria delights in many of thine imports," Princess Luna said. "My sister and I desire to keep trade as free as possible, so that thy merchants may continue to find us welcoming partners." King Renaud chuckled. "I think there is no danger of my subjects thinking you as anything less than welcoming. There is no secret that ponies are our largest market, outside of our own country, of course." Princess Luna paused and nodded indeed. Then I would ask, "What is thy stance on privacy? We feel as though more ships than usual have fallen victim as of late." "Piracy is certainly bad for business on both sides of our common sea. My subjects have also been making their concerns known to me," he responded. "Wouldst thou be willing to create the amount of ships committed to combating it if we were also willing to do so? Could we yet further agree to coordinate and offer protection to all ships, not just those under our respective flags?" Princess Luna asked carefully. "A joint venture to protect all ships from pirates. A novel idea. It may certainly bring our naval forces closer together, and it would certainly be better for business. Exactly how large of an increase are you considering, Princess?" "We feel as though the problem is getting out of hoof. a tenth again over what exists now, with the hope that as we work together, the amount of ships required will decrease. Princess Ina replied. King Renald paused and lightly plucked a brilliant rose from a nearby bush. He smelled it before offering it to the princess. Consider it done, my friend. The lieutenant and I sat quietly in one of the local taverns having a cider, or at least what Griffins called cider. It wasn't remotely the same, but it was about the only drink they made that I could take on other than water. A week of negotiation had been going well. Princess Una was confident that she would have an official agreement signed soon. You're looking better, Sergeant," Lieutenant Rook said. With a nod, I replied, "Thank you, sir. I'm feeling more like myself. A couple of good sleeps have really cleared my head." Lieutenant Rook smiled and asked, "Seen any more ghosts?" "No, sir." My tone remained flat and private. The other sergeants and lieutenants had teased me a bit. They'd written the whole thing off as paranoia, and the exemplar had been her usual confusing self about it. I still wasn't convinced yet, but instead of crying wolf, I was just going to be extra diligent. I still think some of the Griffins are up to something. That Captain Alistair rubs me wrong, and he... My eyes drifted up. Just walked through the door. We both watched as the Griffin approached. Well, well, well. I see you two are not under the princess's hoof today. Did she give you her day off? If you two are here, who's keeping account of those misfit ponies you call guards? Captain Alistair taunted as we approached. Lieutenant Rook yawned and replied, "Our misfit ponies are smart enough to manage themselves for an afternoon. They don't require an officer's constant attention to ensure they don't ruffle each other's feathers." Alistair lightly clapped for the lieutenant and said, "Bravo! My men ruffle each other's feathers because they're all winners. I would gladly put them against your little bunch of ponies any day of the week." I took a long drink from cider and set it down. A whole company of Griffins against a mere 40 ponies. I don't know, you're being awfully generous with that handicap. Do you have any other friends you could invite to help you? I imagine not. He'd never admitted, but I'm pretty sure the lieutenant had to stifle a laugh at that one. Captain Alistair seethed. "You dare insult my company? Is that a challenge you're after?" The lieutenant set a hoof between me and the Griffin. "No, he is most certainly not insulting your company or offering a challenge. We would be poor guests if we did that, just as insulting our unit would be you making a poor host, and nobody here is a poor guest or host, right?" "No, of course not," the captain said, "but perhaps before you leave we will see who has the best soldiers." He turned with a dramatic flair and marched out. "Towing the line a little close there, aren't you, Sergeant?" the lieutenant asked. I shook my head. "Oh, no, sir, I honestly believe he doesn't have any friends." Lieutenant Rook's face contorted as he tried to remain stern. He half smiled and swallowed another laugh. "Just keep it cool for a few more days, then we'll be on our way home." "Aye, aye, sir," I muttered, finishing the swill they called cider. I sat quietly in the room I was sharing with Iridescence and Orchid. A parchment rested on the desk in front of me, only 3 words on it. "Dear Crystal Wishes." It was proving to be very difficult to write a letter to her, and I wasn't sure why. When we had first arrived, I wrote one, and it was pretty mundane. I talked about my poor time at sea and what Griffin cities looked like. I was not allowed to discuss any of the official business going on, and that didn't make for a good letter to a friend anyway. "Dear Crystal Wishes, I know you're into mares and currently with our mutual friend Velvet Step, but if you ever decide you want to try stallions, please look at me," I said out loud jokingly. I rubbed my face with my hooves. What am I doing? Picking the pencil back up and starting again, I wrote, "It is certainly not a sure thing, but we may be coming home soon. I dread the thought of getting back on that ship, but the idea of returning to good friends like you fills me with excitement. Each day here has been a testament to how important true friendship is and a reminder about what life could be without it. Though I have no regret in my chosen profession, trips like this one give me pause. I can no longer imagine a life solely devoted to the pursuit of war. I ask that you keep this realization confidential, as I would not want to share it with my comrades in arms. Please give my love to Velvet Step and her family. I look forward to seeing you soon. Your friend, Silent Night. Well, that is certainly much more appropriate. I dropped the letter in an envelope and sealed it. I wrote the address and then put that in another envelope, one that I addressed to the small equestrian consult that was in the local area. They'd handle all of the cloak and dagger business. With my letter written, there wasn't much else to do. I left the room to find Alton. He and I had been sharing security best practices. It was all general, but he had some pretty solid ideas that I wanted to incorporate. I guess diplomacy was a good thing. I certainly was starting to learn that you could trust some griffins. The temple guards were a constant source of amazement and conversation for the rest of the pony retinue. They rarely, if ever, spoke and did exactly what was asked of them without question. Once that was complete, they spent their time sitting in silent meditation or reading from a single book all four of them shared. On a few occasions, they had been taunted by griffins. They acted as if they had not heard their would-be tormentor. Their ability to ignore was immense, so much so that one particularly excitable griffin jumped at Exemplar Feral in an attempt to startle her or get any sort of reaction at all. She didn't so much as flinch. The surprised griffin landed a mere inches from her before being hauled off by a sergeant. I wanted that level of self-discipline. Unfortunately, as a result of their quiet nature, the other ponies tended to steer clear of them. I wasn't sure if I should feel badly about that or not. It didn't seem as if the temple guards cared. In the spirit of positive relations, however, I decided to try and spend some time with Exemplar Feral to learn about them. She was easy to find. If she was not on duty, she would be sitting in the palace garden with her eyes closed, and that is how I found her. I softly cleared my throat and asked, "Excuse me, Exemplar." Her eyes opened slowly. "Yes, Sergeant," she replied. "I was wondering if you've had lunch yet. Had you not, if you'd care to join me," I offered. Exemplar Feral rose and lightly brushed off her armor. "I will join you." With her agreement, we went together to the palace dining hall. King Renald had insisted that all members of Princess Luna's staff has access to it. It was a boon since griffins and ponies have very different diets, but the staff there was capable of providing us. After selecting some fine bread and vegetables, we sat across from each other. "Would you mind if I asked you a few questions, Exemplar?" "I would not mind, though I may not answer, if that is something that you can accept," she replied. "That is only fair. You and your temple guards have been extremely dedicated to our efforts here. I'm only sorry that there hasn't been more social mingling. I hope you and yours don't feel excluded," I stated. "That is of no consequence. We are unaccustomed to social mingling, as he put it. Our lives are spent sequestered within the temple walls, learning and growing. Here we are learning different skills and growing in different ways. It is valuable to see the outside world and bring the knowledge back every so often." "Makes perfect sense to me. I hope to take some of the knowledge from inside the walls and bring it out, if you'll allow it. May I ask about your title? I realize that the temple guards have long since stopped using the ranks of other royal guards use, but I assume you were an officer?" "Nay, Silent Knight," she said, "we do not separate ponies between enlisted and officers as you do. In some ways, all ponies are officers, and in others, none of us are. An exemplar exists to show the way for the others. It is my duty to not follow our faith, but to also lead by example so that others may walk in my footsteps. A pony cannot be won until she fully understands herself and our ways. Then you are the leader of the temple guard? The highest authority? I asked curiously. She shook her head. A leader by example, yes. The leader, no. The temple is led by Exarch, who presides over the temple guards, the unicorn priests, and the lay ponies. The highest authority temple guard is my superior, the Archon. An exemplar is still very important, it sounds to me, I said before finally starting to eat my lunch. Exemplar Farrell shrugged and said, no single exemplar is important. The idea of the exemplar is important as an example we set is necessary. She took my cue and started to eat. Perhaps when we return I'll be able to come visit you on occasion. I would like to know more about the temple, if that is allowed. She nodded. Slowly a thought dawned on me and I looked around the room. There weren't any ponies within earshot, and most of them were too busy with their own conversations. My voice dropped to a whisper. Do you know the name Nocturna? The effect on the exemplar was immediate. Her ears shut up and she locked eyes with me. There was surprise in her face for an instant before it disappeared into a usual blank expression. Yes. Can you tell me anything about her? Can? Yes. Will? No. My apologies. She looked back at her food, and the vacant expression hardened. That was certainly a reaction. Changing the subject, I said, I imagine we'll be leaving soon. The exemplar paused and looked at me. I imagine not. She replied without explanation. I swallowed, really disliking the certainty in her voice. Hope you guys have had a wunderbar day.